Good afternoon or good evening, depending where in the world you're joining from online, of course, because we've got our online participants today too. Welcome to this session today, which is all about mapping the landscape of digital research tools. So this is a fairly new working group. It's been going for around 7 months now, but we're really just starting to get into our next deliverable. So it's a really good time to host this session today. The objectives of this session are that we would like to introduce you as newcomers to the work that has been done so far. And then we're going to start a landscape review. So we're actually going to start the really exciting part of this group, which is to map different types of tools to the research data lifecycle. And we'll come to that and explain what that will look like shortly. Before I move on, I just want to say welcome to you all. Thank you for being here. And also a huge thanks to the co-chairs. We have Adam Viles-Moore online. Emmanuel, I don't think, can make it, but we also have 3 of the co-chairs in person. So I just want to shout you out if you can give them a wave. So in order, we have Francis Crawley, we have Rory McNeil, and we have Hye-Lim Rhee. So I think Hye-Lim's at the front, and I think you might join a group, I don't know, shortly, but we're all going to try to present today and share a bit about this group. I should also just introduce myself. So for those who don't know me, my name's Connie Clare. I'm not a co-chair of this group, but I'm actually a facilitator. So that might be, if you're familiar with the RDA, a bit of a new concept for you. And I'll try to explain a bit about that shortly, but I can also chat in the break if you want to know what my role is in more detail. A few logistics before we begin about this working group. So you might, I don't know if some of you are members, you might have received an email yesterday. But I'll also try to share a link to the slides, and hopefully you'll have access to the collaborative notes. So let me know if you don't have access shortly. When you get access to these slides, there are some important links here that might help you. So we've got information about the working group. We also have a shared Google folder where we store all of our documentation and information about our deliverables that you can access. I've got a link to the collaborative notes, and I always show this in all of our working group sessions. Information about the Research Data Alliance's guiding principles, the code of conduct, and also this guidance that we have on AI tool usage, but I won't go into that now. That's just for your interest in information. So I think we're in good time. So I'm just going through this welcome and housekeeping now. So we're doing well. Then we'll have very, very short lightning presentations just about the group. So we'll take you through the background and description of the group, the aims and objectives. It's quite a broad and ambitious topic, so I'm sure you'll have questions about it. Francis and Rory will be delivering this. Rory will share a bit about the deliverables, what we would like to achieve and what we've done so far. And Hye-Lim will talk a bit about the working group progress and the next steps. And then hopefully we'll have quite an amount of time, hopefully 40 minutes or so, to go into breakouts. So you're already in your nice groups now. And this is where you can start thinking about different types of tools and how we might map those to the research data lifecycle. There'll be some time where you can report back. So when we get to that breakout exercise, and I'll explain it in more detail, I'd like you to also think about the challenges that you face doing this. Is it an easy task? What can we consider as a working group going forward to make this easier for us to do? And then we'll wrap up at the end, and hopefully you'll have enjoyed the session. But in the collaborative notes, I just want to say we've got 3 questions at the end for feedback. So we would like to also encourage you to go to that at the end and provide us feedback if you have any. I also just want to very briefly mention that this is, like I say, a facilitated working group, and it's quite different from others within the RDA. So at the beginning of this year, the Research Data Alliance entered into a public-private partnership model. You'll see that I've linked the framework here, and you can read more about that online. And that really means that as part of the Research Data Alliance strategic plan, we feel it's important to not work in a silo, but also to engage with the private sector. So we have 2 working groups that are facilitated for the next 12 to 18 months by Oracle for Research. Just like with everything else associated with the RDA, the outputs are created by the community for the community, and they are owned by the RDA. So they're all openly available at the end of the process. The idea with this collaboration with the private sector is that it really gives the RDA an opportunity to inject professional and timely facilitation efforts to support this global volunteer effort. We really appreciate that the RDA community have other jobs, they're otherwise busy, and they don't always have the time to commit to interest groups and working groups. So I hope that this facilitation does actually support some of that. Okay, so I'm now going to hand over to Francis, who's going to talk to you a bit about the background and description of the working group. Thank you, Francis.
Thank you. Thank you, Tommy. Thanks very much. Should turn it on. Yes. The on switch off. Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah. Good. Thank you, Connie. Thanks so much. I just want to start by saying, I think on behalf of the co-chairs as well, really a warm welcome to everyone here. And especially we have to begin, I think, with a really huge thank you to Connie, because Connie is the one who put us on the rails and keeps us on the rails. He keeps this group moving and really does a fantastic job in getting us going. I find it for myself a very challenging topic that we have, not an easy topic to deal with. So, and I think you also see that when we're in our groups today, it won't be easy. So this is a way we have to find together a way forward in this, but I think it's also something very worthwhile. What we saw is that there's a large amount of tools, quite various tools out there that we use for managing and sharing data in our research environments. And so and as you could say, it's overwhelming. And I think overwhelming is a good description of it here. So we're looking at the research data lifecycle, and we're trying to categorize different research tools based on their features, their functionalities, and how they interoperate. So we want to look at those and try to come up with some categorizations in that area. And then we'll try to use the tools and see how the tools are used across lifecycle, or the tools that are used across lifecycle are not always interoperable. And it seems to lead to siloed working and inefficient data management and sharing. So the aim of the working group is to categorize different types of research tools and map those research tools to different research data life cycles based on their features and functionalities. It's a huge sentence. It's a complex sentence. There's a lot going on in there, and you'll see too, I think, in the working group today that it's not so easy. So our objectives are the creation of a research data lifecycle model, and then a crosswalk to existing data lifecycle models, and the identification, categorization, and mapping of different types of research tools, and in order to come up with a kind of categorization scheme. So the creation of a preliminary structural framework for an online open access map of the digital research tool landscape. I think what we're coming to, and you'll help us to decide today, but I think what we're coming to understand is we're not going to map all of the different digital tools that are out there, but we're going to try to understand what the most important features are of them and how we can categorize them according to the data research lifecycle. Is that correct, Connie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you, Francis.
Okay. Thanks very much. Yeah. I think I give to Rory now, please.
Thanks, Francis. Hi, morning, everyone. Welcome from me as well. And this is probably going to sound like a broken record, but we're going to embarrass Connie here. I'd just like to say what Francis said about Connie being an amazing leader. I know you don't like the word of this group is true. And for those of you who haven't been involved in working groups before, they're pretty different from interest groups, because the working groups, you actually have to do work. So I hope everybody's up for doing some work this morning. But the good news about this working group is it is very well organized, and that's thanks to Connie. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's unnecessary. Thank you.
Not necessary, but well deserved. I'm going to talk briefly about the deliveries and methodology. So there's 3 deliverables in this group, and I realize some of you have already been involved, and thank you obviously for your ongoing contributions so far. But for those who aren't, this is an overview and perhaps just a reminder for those who have been involved as well. So the first deliverable was the creation of a research data lifecycle model and crosswalk to existing models. So we looked at, there were dozens, hundreds of these lifecycle models, and everybody's familiar with them. But we thought at the end of the day, it would be useful to look at them and come up with one which otherwise we would have been confused, I think, one which we can use as kind of a benchmark for ourselves. And it's certainly not reinventing the wheel, and it's not rocket science. It'll be very familiar to most of you, but it has again familiar phases. So those are the phases that we've chosen, and you can, I think, if you click on that, you can see in some of the detail about how we've characterized each of those phases. Next slide, please. So yeah, what were the tasks associated with deliverable 1? So how did we do it? We conducted a landscape review, as I said, of other life cycles. We tried to identify common stages of each phase, and then we supported each stage of the research life cycle with terminology. And the way we did this was exactly how we're going to do it today. You'll see there were working groups, and people kind of investigated what was out there, and then came up with the model with the phases and the description for each phase. So that's where we are at the moment. So today we're working on deliverable 2, and we've had one other session where we started to kind of experimentally work on deliverable 2. So deliverable 2 is called identification, categorization, and mapping of different types of research tools for each phase. So a categorization schema. So what's a tool? This is as Francis said, a long definition. So tools enable researchers to perform one or more operations, typically on data, and often with data as the output. Tools are usually intended for use by humans. In this context, we are explicitly excluding physical instruments. So again, it's not specific tools we're trying to look at, but types of tools. But to do that, we're looking at specific tools and then coming up with a typology. So and what we're trying to do is to describe, categorize, and map types of research tools to each phase in the life cycle.
And just before we move on, Marie, I just want to add that definition of a tool might be, might feel different to different people. I should give an acknowledgement to the Global Open Research Commons interest and working group, because that's where that definition has actually come from. So we're trying to build upon that as well.
Yeah, maybe I'll just make a brief comment on that. I don't know. It's really, really unfortunate, but as we speak, there's another session going on, the Global Open Research Commons group, they are just finishing their work. And in fact, the Global Open Research Commons is a fantastic initiative. And if you don't know about it, I recommend that you can't leave our session now, but afterwards you try to find out what they're doing. And they've come up, no one's, close the doors. They've come up with a model for a Global Open Research Commons, which has various elements. And one of the elements in the model is tools and services. So what we're doing now, it hopefully will build on, but also take forward what they've come up with in terms of categorizing tools and services. So the two groups are linked. Yes, so that was deliverable 2. What are the tasks associated with deliverable 2? Identification, categorization, and mapping of different types of research tools, a categorization schema. So first, to conduct a landscape, this is what we'll be doing today, conduct a landscape review and look at different types of tools. Secondly, describe, categorize, and map the different types of tools to each research lifecycle. And then thirdly, to try to, going beyond a bit, assess features, functionality, and interoperability of different types of research tools. So that's where we are today, and we're there. I think I've forgotten 10 or 11 phases, and we've already done one phase. So we're going to try to knock off, I think, 4 or 5 phases today. So we're kind of at the early stage of this deliverable 2, and then the third deliverable is the creation of a preliminary structural framework for an online open access map of the digital research tool landscape. So to take what we've done and then to turn it into something a bit like what the Global Open Research Commons Group has done, something which is both visually and both a visual and a narrative form is meaningful. So it needs to be, some of these, we don't know what form it's going to take, but this thing, whatever it is that we come up with, needs to be navigable. It needs to be searchable. At least it needs to be living and dynamic and allow for ongoing curation. And we're also going to provide some recommendations for how that ongoing sustainability could be achieved.
So as you can probably appreciate, a lot of work is coming up over the next six or so months. But yes, I hope that doesn't put you off joining the group. It's a very exciting time.
So yeah, so where are we? As I said, the landscape review deliverable 1 was completed in October. We're now in categorizing in the second phase. So as I've just described what we're doing, collecting examples, describing the features, and then we'll go on to map those to the different phases in the life cycle. And that's really the work of the next couple of months, which in many ways is I think is the guts of what we're doing. So these few months are really the key part of whether we're going to come up with something which is useful or not. And then, as I said, after that, it's a matter of turning what we come up with into something which can be visualized and also described in ways which are meaningful and understandable to people who weren't involved in the process. Yeah, so that's, let me pass over. Thank you very much, Healy.
Thank you, Rory.
Hello, everyone. I thank you, all of you, for coming this early morning on especially Austrian holidays. I'll be talking you through the 2 deliverables we've been working on recently. The first of these is the creation of a research data lifecycle model, which we have connected to existing models. Much of this work has already been completed. We have already conducted a landscape review to research and consult existing models, which we then used to identify common actions within these research data life cycles to integrate into our own life cycle model. Finally, we developed proprietary terminology to support the definitions of each action within this model, which we refer to as the stages of the model. The second of these is to identify, categorize, and map different research tools with the aim of creating a categorization schema. Much of this work is ongoing, with step 1 actually happening during today's session. Much as with our first deliverable, we'll be starting with a landscape review to better understand the different types of research tools used. This will be conducted by a workshop later in this session. In November, we will then seek to describe, categorize, and map the application of these research tools within the novel research data lifecycle model we created in deliverable 1. Finally, we will then assess their features, functionality, and interoperability to generate a new categorization schema. Now, I will hand you over to Connie, who will be talking you through the breakout activity that we'll be using to conduct this landscape review.
Thank you, Healim. So you've been taken through a couple of times now on the working group updates and progress. Does anybody, just before we move on to the breakout, have any questions that they would like to ask? We have about a minute or so. If not, we can maybe chat about it in the breakouts. I'll come round and you can ask anything. Okay, so in person online, the instructions for the next 40 minutes. I see that you've already started to create groups, which is great. We did say we wanted around 3 to 5 people, but if your group is bigger, that's also okay, whatever you feel comfortable with. I'm going to come around the room and just make sure that you've all been allocated a stage of the research data lifecycle. So the co-chairs have identified 5 stages: collect, process, analyze, store, and preserve. And the idea is for the next 40 minutes for you to discuss, and you should have access through the collaborative notes to a Google Sheet that we've set up. I'll come around and make sure, and hopefully the co-chairs can do the same, make sure that you've got access to the collaborative notes. So at least one person in the group will need a laptop. And what we would like you to do is just discuss different types of tools that you think are relevant to that stage. So for example, if it was planning, it might be Data Stewardship Wizard or DMP Online, or, you know, those kinds of tools that you might use for planning research. So don't worry if you don't think it's accurate, or if it covers many stages, or if you're not sure if it's a tool, or if it's disciplinary. It doesn't matter at this stage. All we really want to do is collect information about the different tools. So even if you think of the name of the tool and provide a link, that would be really useful. So I'll just show you what the Google Sheet looks like. So as you can see, we're asking you to provide the name of the tool, a link of the tool. If you know the name of the tool provider, that would be useful. What type of tool is this? Is it a repository? Is it an archive? Like, you know, we just try to describe these tools as best as you possibly can. If you can identify if it's open or closed source, that would be useful. And then I think it's column F there, tool characteristics. So we're at the stage where we don't know yet how we might want to categorize or describe the features and functionalities at this stage. So if there's anything that you might want to note about that tool, useful features, why it's important for that stage, that's where you can write it in that box. And I'm hoping Google Sheets is going to be useful, because I know it can jump about a bit when everybody starts to use it. So I'm hoping it's going to be clear. So that's that. Does anybody have any questions about that activity? Okay. I'll take it as that's all clear, and I'll come round. But if you would like to get into groups, any groups that don't have a stage, I will allocate you on shortly. So off we go, and I'll make sure the online participants are also knowing what they're doing.
So the last point is possible. Well, the reason why is the next stage. So you don't normally extend this
Hello? Yeah, it worked. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for participating in that exercise. If I can have your attention, we're now just going to report back. So if I can ask you to introduce yourself as a reporter and the stage of the research data lifecycle you're working on. I think we'll start with Collect. Collect group. Collect. Who's Collect? Right. I'll bring the mic down. Who's reporting back?
Hi, my name is Ramon. We are the Collect group, and we got 45 entries, roughly. They stretch from online surveys to certain APIs to web applications, citizen science, animal movement, web scraping, crowdsourcing, and a few other types of categories. Some are certainly really overlapping in terms of their ways of working and what they seek to achieve, let's say survey tools, but some are open, some are proprietary. And then there's always a bit of a blend what these tools also do, or these solution offerings provide in terms of just collecting data, or whether they stretch into storing and analytical territories. So the boundaries aren't clear. Earlier, we had a bit of a struggle, which is just fine, but just to call it out at this stage, that the definition is useful, but also somewhat limited in that a tool that is not physical can mean many different things. And so is it just, let's say, some sort of a mechanism that converts one signal into another signal or data? Or are we also talking about sources in a way, sources of data? Are these tools too? And I don't mean just repositories, but there are many different sources that people would deem tools. So that's just something to be aware of at this stage, I believe. And I guess anyone with certain domain knowledge and experience could just hop on and contribute to that list, because it probably becomes quite useful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything to add, anyone? Any questions for the Collect group?
Connie, I just wanted to say, I don't think we budgeted for this. It was €5 per tool we were going to give to the groups. This is quite a few tools. This is really nice. This is very, very helpful to us. Thank you very much. Yeah. I hope we have the money at the end here.
I think you said you were going to pay, Francis. Process group. Thank you. Tessa.
Hi. So we first started with debating what exactly is processing. because it can mean many things. And then we went on thinking of what tool types we could have, so not specific tools themselves. So we came up with electronic lab notebooks, anonymization, metadata, data cleaning tools. And once we've gotten some of those tool types, we then went on by looking for specific tools themselves. And some of the comments that we had is that very often they're very discipline specific, and we were missing somebody from the social sciences, so that's a gap that we have there. But nevertheless, we thought that it was a very interesting exercise how it was built up, and other than that, that also institutes often have their own tools that they're making, and they're often not very willing to share that with other institutes. So that's also something that we should take into account. And I think those were the most important parts, but I leave it to my other colleagues. Right, but yeah.
Thank you so much, Tessa, and to this group. Does anybody have any questions about the process tools or that report back?
Just to say, Connie, I think it's very important that we don't miss the social
Sorry,
science.
don't want to get hung up on definitions, but the process and analyze sort of categories, I wonder how you separate them or how to best think about them, because sometimes you transform data and that's a straightforward thing. Sometimes you analyze it and meanwhile you transform it. So the processing and analyzing and missing data imputation, whatever it is that you do, how do you separate them out maybe to make that more clear so that sort of typology becomes a lot more useful? And tools often reach across boundaries, but what these boundaries are might be a useful exercise at some point.
Absolutely, and I think that maybe looking back on these tool examples might help us to refine those definitions, and it's probably going to be an iterative process going back to that first deliverable over again. But thank you so much, Tessa, and thank you for those comments. Over to the Analyze group.
Hey, so we had a lot of discussion and did not actually put down a single tool in the spreadsheet because we had a lot of discussion about what analysis tools are. Like the previous group, we were kind of having a lot of discussion about the level of granularity and how, you know, different disciplines have very granular analysis tools that they use, and whether you would be mapping those tools or whether you would just be saying GitHub is a repository for a ton of stuff. We also had a discussion about how some communities are less interested in free and open source alternatives. There is some commercial software that is extremely well suited to the needs of a specific community, and there is a lot of dedicated support to using those commercial tools, and therefore there's no interest in free and open source alternatives. So just thinking about that level as well. And then Marcus and myself both mentioned mapping exercises that had already been undertaken that can be used and maybe sorted through by this community of existing lists of tools that we could maybe be populating the list. I think that was everything. Did I miss something?
Thank you, Lou. And I think is it the J. Roston 101 innovations, 101 innovations that you've sent to me before? Those. Okay. If you want to link them in there, then we can definitely revisit them if that's good. Thank you. Any questions about the analysis stage or tools? Okay. Move on then. So we've got two groups working on STOR. We've got the in-person group, first of all. So we'll go to them and then we'll go to those online. So I don't know who can report back from this group. Laurence. Oh.
Okay, so we discussed about first the meaning of storage, what does that mean for us, and the different characteristics for storage. Then we shared our own tools, and then we came up with the idea on, okay, we have a lot of institutional storage solutions. but does it make sense to share them? Because normally they are closed access only for the university or the institute themselves. Yes, and then we discussed about that. And then we also listed some repositories which are open or open solutions for storage. Yeah, but we came up with the idea, okay, maybe for storage, it's closed access and it's hard to have there so many tools.
Thank you, Daniela. Does anybody have any questions about the storage report back? Could we please go to the online participants so that they can share their report back on storage?
Yeah, Connie, can you hear me? Yeah. Hello.
Bear with us online. We're trying to show the screen so everybody can see you.
Hello.
Hi, Rich. We can't
Can you-
see you, but we can hear you.
Well, I can soon turn my telly on. That's okay. Just a second. There you go. Hello,
I don't think-
everybody.
I think the
Hello.
problem's... Oh, yeah, here. We can see you and your cat.
Yep, this is Research Cat Betty, who likes to join in. So there
Oh,
we go. Okay, I'll just quickly share my screen because I think this is a quick way of showing what we're doing. So Adam and I sort of took the line about looking at generalized tools that can be applied into managing data, and then we highlighted a couple, and there's a load more to do here, of repositories. So for example, Oracle's Open Data Repository, Mandalay has another one, and so on. But also the other thing, we should ride on the back of the GORC working group and have a look at what they're doing in their tools and services, and perhaps make sure that we cross-reference to them as another strand, another string to our bow, if you like. And also not just considering databases and data management tools in that sense, but graph tools. So I put in the W3C web standards RDF graphing tools as an area, for example. But there's a lot to consider, and we've just given, Adam and I just put together some real basic examples, but we can build on this.
thank you so much, Rich. Does anybody in the room have any questions for the online group? Yeah, James.
It's not a question for the online group, but also when we're looking at storage, most of the actual hardware providers will have software layers on top of it, which provide lots of tools to do it. So I think if we're missing out the kind of the underlying hardware and the tools, then we're having a very partial picture of what we have in storage. So for instance, for most of our, I mean, essentially our file system storage tools are based on the old GPFS standard, but you have object storage tools and various things which are absolutely essential for this. So I don't know if those are in scope for this exercise or not, but it'd look a bit odd for anyone from a kind of a hardware background to not include them.
Right, I've made a note there. Thank you. Just so that we consider it later on in the meetings. All right.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rich. Thank you.
Cheers.
To the final group now. So this is on Preserve. Yeah, Andrea, thank you.
So we went through and gathered a few tools, but more importantly, what we started talking about were a couple things. One, we had a decent discussion about interoperability and how are we going to define interoperability? And we came up with basically 3 different ways these tools could be interoperable. They can be interoperable within the stage. Do any of the preserved tools work well together? Can they be strung together with tools from other life cycle stages? So I think, Rory, you were calling that horizontal and vertical interoperability. And then finally, are there other tools that are making interoperability possible, like interoperability facilitation tools, metadata mapping tools, data exchange and integration tools? And then the other point that we brought up that I believe Collect also brought up is that so many organizations are making bespoke tools. They may be pulling in things, but maybe they've been doing it for such a long time that the standards and the tools didn't exist. So they have something that's been around for 25 years that has, they've managed to make work for themselves. And how do we make sure that that sort of work is being captured within these categorizations?
Thank you. That's really important. And I don't think that I have the answer for that, how we can capture that. We're just going to have to probably work with, in the time we've got, what we actually can access. But I think that I'm really quite impressed with the amount of different tools and the feedback that we've received in this session. So it's more than exceeded my expectations. So I echo Francis's comments at the beginning. So thank you all very much for being so engaged, especially at the last day of the plenary and after the bar hopping. I'm very, very impressed. I'm now going to be having 2 mics. Maybe I should go back to the lecture. Okay. I also need my software. Okay, so I just want to say thank you again for that exercise, and I hope that you found it useful. And maybe this working group is large, ambitious, and ambiguous. So I hope it's starting to seem logical to you now. I think we're going to start being able to work on these tools next and start to think about the characteristics and the interoperability and try to categorize them. So that's really great. I just want to share some next steps with you. And before we leave the room, I'd also like you to think about providing some feedback on the group as well. So the next steps will be, we have our next working group meeting, not too short actually away, so it's quite soon, on the Thursday, the 9th of November. So I'd like to encourage anybody here that is available and would like to join to participate in the group. I think we'll be discussing how we can really take on all of this information and expand this landscape review to the additional stages that we've not yet visited. Maybe think about those definitions again, and how these tools span multiple stages, and how stages have the same tools. I think we'll have to struggle with that next. We might well think about identification of criteria. So that's one of the ideas that this group has come up with. So inclusion and exclusion criteria for different stages or different tools. What makes that tool applicable to that particular stage? And I really liked actually the Preserve Group's ideas for those 3 different levels of interoperability and how we can look at tools in that way. So I have linked the working group webpage in these slides. So on our webpage, all of our meetings are documented, so you can always read the meeting notes. You can see the presentation slides and you can look at the deliverables. So this actual Google Sheet will be available on there if you want to revisit that in the future. So this is a plug really. As we start this work, we would welcome you on board to help us with that exercise. So I don't know if you are RDA members already, if you're familiar with the process, but it's very easy. Obviously, it's free to join the RDA. And then from there, you can join this group from the webpage. And if you want to ask me any questions about that, feel free to do so. I don't know why, but I've noticed that all the bullet points here are numbered 111 in this presentation. I really don't know why. I apologize for that. I think we must have been really tired when putting these slides together and tired when reviewing them, because I've not noticed. So the co-chairs have actually put together 3 questions. So for the remaining time, for the remaining 10 minutes, if you can go to the collaborative notes, you can do this by adding your name or you can do it anonymously. We would like you to just provide us a bit of feedback. So what gaps do you see in your scholarly work? So I'm sure you're from different backgrounds and different institutions and do different roles. What gaps do you see in your work that generally you think that this working group might be able to address? So what do you think is useful about what we're trying to achieve? And we've already got deliverables outlined, but we're always open to suggestions from the community and the group on how we might be able to tackle some of these issues. So what methodologies or mechanisms do you think the working group could use? Do you think what we're proposing to do is feasible? And do you have any further ideas? And what do you think? And we've said here principal outputs, but I think what does a categorization schema look like? because obviously we're working in Google Sheets and we're collecting all this information, but what we would like to do is try to make this visually appealing and easy to navigate. So I don't know if you have any ideas for how you think this group could achieve that. So I think in the final sort of 5 minutes, I just want to allow you some time for reflection. And if you can add notes into our document, that would be really useful. Thank you. And you're also free to, ask any questions at this point too. Francis, have a question? Have the mic.
Thanks so much, Connie. So I just want to say, as a co-chair, and Connie, this session was great. So thank you very much. All is really good. I think it's really, really good. I was unsure about this. I was unsure about breaking into groups and doing it this way. Connie and Rory and Halim and Adam, but they thought we should, and I think they're right. And I think it was really, really a good exercise. Also, I think it was nice to do something different than sit in a room and listen to slides and every once in a while ask a question or so. I thought that was really great. You're all signed up. You're all members of our working group now. We need you very much. You have a lot of wisdom, a lot of understanding, a lot of experience in the room. So please do what Connie say, sign up and give us some feedback now and help us to work better as we go forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Francis. Does anybody else have any questions about the working group and what we've proposed? No? Okay.
Somebody has something.
Oh.
Shall we refer to the questions there or not yet?
No, you can ask any questions now, yeah.
For me, the biggest challenge is really to spread the knowledge about what tools are existing, so and finding them. So maybe the output could be something lively, such as schema.org or so, that you can really, it has to live because it changes every day, the landscape. So it has to be something very lively, so dynamic. Well, that's the challenge for me.
But to your question, for myself as well, for myself anyway, let's say, there are so many tools out there. And as you say, every day there's another 1,000 or something coming online. So it cannot be just a listing of tools, you know, according to collection or analysis or processing or something. That's an impossibility. That's not interesting. Nobody would be interesting. So how can we, let's say, create a kind of accessibility to those tools, kind of categorization of those tools that does help people with their research, it does help create the access that we want. I think that's the question we have. Rory?
Let me just, I think, thanks. I can't see who asked the question, but yeah, I mean, following on that point, I think we have already a current example of that, which is the GORC model, which is being launched in the other room this morning. And we're already trying to continue to take what they've done and to build on it a bit. So like the GORC model, how is that going to be sustainable? I think these are complementary, and because that's also a very lively space. So in thinking about whatever form of dynamism and sustainability we come up with, I think we should, and the GORC model, I think the GORC is going to continue as an interest group. We should include them in that discussion. And maybe the RDA can provide a different kind of a model. We can come up with a different kind of sustainability model that could be a contribution as well, which is a little bit different from a list, a little bit different from schema.org, and involves the RDA being involved in the continuing evolution of these things. I don't have any specific constructs in mind, but I think that would be something we might consider.
So I'd like to say that this meeting has really helped everything click into place for me, which is good.
Good.
But one thing to add, we can be building upon the GORC, but also I now can see a path to build upon the research data framework, where we can take the categorizations that we've developed and map them into the topics and subtopics within that. And that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
So
I agree. I agree, because that was always trying to find, that was the intention of trying to see how we could build upon. And by the way, Andrea is from the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So Andrea is representing NIST here today and is one of the members. So that's great to hear. So let's try to harness that now. Let's try to build upon the NIST Research Data Framework and the GORC work and any other existing maps that we have access to. I'm glad it's helped. Yeah, I'm glad it's helped. That's wonderful. We have 5 minutes left, and I don't want to, I'm probably in between you and coffee now, but we can wrap up if there are no further questions. Thank you for leaving feedback. Thank you for your engagement. And again, thank you all. Thanks to the co-chairs and the members that turn up every month and keep this group going. I'm very, very appreciative of that. So enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.